Top tips for controlling mold? Well, dehumidification. That's probably the most critical thing for getting the house back to normal. I mentioned the relative humidity. Along the coast, relative humidity tends to be a little higher than it is inland. And, you know, having some moisture in the air is certainly important, but if the relative humidity goes beyond 60%, then mold has a chance to get established. You know, it seems counterintuitive to try to keep the house warm because that's where you would expect mold to flourish. But, you know, as the temperature goes down, the air is less able to hold moisture, which causes condensation on cold surfaces, and that actually encourages mold growth. But if the goal is to keep the house warm, I got to warn you against these propane heaters that people use. They are not the best for this situation because they generate moisture as they are also generating heat. So here's a case where electric heating has a definite advantage. If you are not using electric heating, of course, carbon monoxide detector is critical. Since interstitial walls often form a way for air to move from one part of the house to another, it's important to pay attention to the areas inside the wall cavities. Adding insulation to cold surfaces, exterior walls, floors, windows, works to reduce condensation. Again, this is just basic building science. Oh, yeah. So this is that propane heater that adds moisture as it's adding heat. So it's not really the answer for trying to control mold. More basic building science, we typically use some sort of poly cover when we can, over dirt in a crawl space maybe. We want to prevent moisture from coming in on the ground. A pool liner works really great here. If there's standing water, it has to be dried out before covering. Because water is always present in soil. It can easily enter the house by leaking in or seeping through the basement walls or eking up into the walls. If you plan to install carpet over a concrete floor, it may be necessary to first use a vapor barrier, some sort of plastic sheeting over the concrete, and then cover that with subflooring. So these are the recovery efforts. The best practice here, you know, summed up, dry everything out, remove any water damaged or contaminated building materials, clean and disinfect the surfaces, keep the humidity low. And then keep your eyes open. Mold is not like rust. Rust never sleeps. Mold spores can remain viable for years. So we got to watch out for that. Another counterintuitive activity, using water to remove mold. Well, yeah, the idea is to disrupt growth. Mold cannot grow in water. So it needs moisture, but it can't grow in water. So we want to eliminate the spread of mold spores as much as possible. So, you know, use your water to minimize the airborne mold spores. It can be removed from non-porous surfaces with basic soap and detergent. But yes, as I said, not possible to remove it maybe from some porous surfaces when it gets established in the fibers of wood or paper and sheetrock. So yeah, the best thing to do is to use a sander to eliminate it if you're not sure. And yeah, let's talk about protective gear a little bit. Always important to use protective gear for a task like this. Seal off the work area from the rest of the home if possible to avoid the spread of mold spores if you're going to use a sander to try to eliminate it. Yeah, don't be all macho about mold. Take proper steps to protect yourself. Use a mask, a respirator that will filter out mold spores. Usually we're looking for something designated as an N95 or a TC21C. These are in my presentation, so you can write them down, but you don't have to remember them. A TC21C particulate respirator. It's also best to use eye equipment, protection, rubber gloves, and clothing that can be immediately laundered. Yeah, you want to set something up in the garage so when you go home, you can take your clothes off in the garage and go right inside. That's the way to go. Advanced stages of mold growth, nothing to fool around about. After the mold is removed, you'll need to disinfect using a disinfectant. Bleach and water is probably the most common, but the amount of bleach recommended per gallon varies considerably. A clean surface requires less disinfectant than a dirty surface. So, you know, as we said, mold spores can cling to dirt particles, even small ones, makes it much more difficult to remove. So ideally, we clean before we disinfect. Concentrations as high as 1.5 cups of bleach per gallon of water are recommended for wood and concrete surfaces that cannot be cleaned thoroughly. And if you bleach, you need adequate ventilation. And wear rubber gloves too. So yeah, bleach is the most common disinfectant, but it's kind of dangerous in and of itself. It can burn your skin, it produces harsh fumes, it can damage the materials that it's used on, as it's, you know, it's a corrosive chemical. So for these reasons, we try to avoid using bleach, and if you got to use it, only use it on non-porous surfaces. There are other options to consider. There are advantages to using borax, for example, to kill mold. Borax is a natural cleaning product, does not emit chemicals or fumes. You can buy borax in the supermarket for just a few dollars. You don't need to rinse off borax on porous surfaces, as the solution itself will prevent more mold from growing on the surface again. So there's one solution or one activity you can try on those joists. Vinegar, a mild acid which kills about 80% of all mold species. So it'll probably work. For common mold, you want to use the white distilled vinegar, which you can get it from a supermarket pretty cheap. You pour the vinegar into a spray bottle. You don't need to water it down. You spray the vinegar onto the moldy surface, let it sit there for an hour, and then wipe it clean. And then clean it with water and allow that surface to dry. The smell from the vinegar should clear up within a few hours. You might want to repeat this every few days to ensure that the surfaces stay mold-free. And here we're talking about areas that are still being exposed to moisture. And yes, we can get you a copy of the slides after this presentation. Vinegar also, no, I talked about vinegar. Bleach. No, ammonia. That's ammonia does kill mold on hard, non-porous surfaces like countertops. It's not as effective killing mold in porous surfaces like wood or drywall. You never want to mix ammonia with bleach. Everybody know about that? Got to repeat it. Do not mix ammonia with bleach. This was used as a chemical weapon during World War II. It's dangerous. And make sure the ammonia you use says clear ammonia on the label. So you get the clear ammonia, leave it on that area for a few hours before wiping it and cleaning it and rinsing it. Hydrogen peroxide kills mold. It's antifungal as well as antibacterial. It's a good alternative to chlorine bleach, safe to use, doesn't damage the environment, doesn't leave a toxic residue behind or produce fumes. You can buy hydrogen peroxide in a drugstore with the 3% concentration. That's what you're looking for. You can spray a moldy surface completely so that the areas are saturated with hydrogen peroxide, and then you leave it on there for 10 minutes, and it'll certainly kill the mold. Yeah, detergent is good. I missed that, but you know, it's a good first cut. It doesn't really kill mold, but on a non-porous surface, it can clean the mold off, and it doesn't really need to kill it as long as you completely clean it away. Baking soda, mild, harmless to family and pets. Besides killing mold, baking soda also deodorizes. So very useful. Get rid of the smell of mold in the home. It absorbs moisture, so that helps to keep the mold down. Vinegar is used with baking soda in some cases, and because they those two substances kill mold together, and they attack different species of mold. So that's a good thing to do. So you fill up the bottle with some vinegar and some baking soda, and you shake it, and you dissolve the baking soda, and you spray the moldy area, and then you use a sponge or a scrubbing brush to make sure you remove all the mold from the surface, and then you rinse with water. And typically I would spray again and then let the surface dry, do that all over again. This will kill any leftover mold and prevent the mold from returning. Of all the natural solutions, tea tree oil is probably the most effective, also the most expensive. A small amount of tea tree oil goes a long way, though. It's harmless to people. It's antifungal, kills all types of mold. You can buy it for about $10 for a small bottle in natural food stores there. Make sure that you buy real tea tree oil. There's a lot of stuff that smells like it, but it's not the same. You spray it right on the moldy surface and leave it there. No need to rinse. The smell will go away. And so that's a good option. Grapeseed extract, very similar to tea tree oil. So some of these we use on those all-natural people that you know and love that don't want anything weird in their home. Grapeseed extract, perfect for them. It has almost no odor at all, so it makes it better than tea tree oil, but it is kind of expensive. You can get it in health food stores. You create a little solution, mix it with a little water, and spray it onto the surface. You don't have to rinse it away afterwards, although you can use a cloth to wipe it away. The longer it is in contact with the mold, the more it will cut through and kill the mold. Whatever you decide to use, you want to apply the solutions to these surfaces with mold growth, either by using a spray bottle or a bucket and a sponge and a cloth and maybe a scrubbing brush. The disinfectants are really only super effective on non-porous materials. They don't really penetrate into the porous materials, so that's why this is so important to move fast on these houses. But they will kill mold on the surface, and they'll kill the mold spores. Air cleaners usually won't kill mold growing in the house, but they do help to prevent more mold from growing. They remove mold spores in the air, and this helps to prevent new mold colonies from growing. So they're a good long-term solution. The best type of air purifier for mold is one with a HEPA filter and an activated carbon pre-filter. The HEPA filter captures 99% of the particulates that are 0.3 microns in size. Mold spores are usually 1 to 20 microns in size. So the HEPA filter is perfect for filtering mold spores out of the air. The activated charcoal pre-filter also removes the odors since it absorbs VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and microbial VOCs, which is also known as fungus. Sometimes people buy air purifiers to get rid of the mold, but air purifiers do not kill mold.